There are more UFO sightings than ever before.
Strange lights. Alien life.
A UFO.
What lies behind this increasing number of reports?
What the is that?
4 expert UFO investigators are hunting down the truth. Maureen Ellsbury is a respected UFO journalist.
I've studied literally thousands of cases, and most have rational explanations.
Mike Barra is an experienced aeronautics engineer.
Before I believe in flying saucers, I'm going to need hard physical evidence.
The other 2 investigators believe that aliens are already here. Daryl Sims is a private investigator and ex-CIA.
I was abducted by aliens. I think they're a force for evil.
And Stephen Jones claims to have had contact with extraterrestrials.
ETs are walking down the main street right now.
In this investigation, multiple reports of alien abduction in Indiana.
This is the spot where a craft took you.
Yes, right here.
And evidence of extraterrestrial surgery.
So this seemed to be a medical procedure?
It gave that look.
Lead to claims that ETs are producing a new alien hybrid race using human DNA.
There is an intention on the part of these hybridizing species to take over the planet.
Avon, Indiana. Across the state, there's been over 1,500 claims of alien abduction over the past decade. Now, the UFO investigation team is in town to find out if locals really are victims of extraterrestrial kidnapping, and if so, why they are being targeted.
So guys, we're here to investigate a pretty compelling abduction case.
UFO journalist Maureen Ellsbury has background information on the case.
So basically, on March 30th, 2009, Matthew Reed was driving home from the movies when he believes he was abducted. Fast forward an hour and a half, he finds himself outside of his vehicle in the middle of a field 2 miles away from where he was supposed to be, with no recollection of what happened or how he got there.
So, case of missing time?
And this is what Matthew Reed has to say.
The car started to hesitate, and so I'm feathering the gas pedal and trying to figure out what's wrong, and then it was, I guess, like everything just kind of closing in, like being put to sleep for surgery. It's that, and you could almost hear it. It's just like, yeesh. This scares me because there's nothing I can do about it. I'm completely defenseless.
Based on what I'm hearing here, this individual not only needs our help, but I'm telling you, this stuff is a threat. It's a threat to him, it's a threat to his family.
You know, I don't know. This doesn't seem like much to me. It seems like a guy went out with his buddies, went to a movie, tied one on, drove his car into a ditch, wandered around for a while, woke up, you know, maybe half drunk, and, oh, there's my car, and then drives home.
Well, that could be Mike, but first let's deal with the facts and the evidence that Matthew has. I've actually arranged for us to go meet him right now.
Well, let's go.
Fantastic. Let's go.
The team head out of town to interview Matthew Reed to try to get to the bottom of his claims of lost time and alien abduction.
My experience in 2009 changed everything. I don't have a lot of friends anyways. I have a few close friends. And how it's affected my life is, how do I approach them and say, you know, hey, Bill, guess what? And I try to explain it to them, and then the minute you see that blank look in their face, that relationship is over. All I want is for people to see the evidence, the facts, and tell me I'm wrong.
Well, we've arrived to meet Matthew. Our goal is to try and establish whether his case actually involves any alien activity and rule out any other natural explanations.
Hi, Mike Barra.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Hi. Good.
Do you mind starting us off with a detailed explanation of sort of what happened to you?
Fred and I went to a movie. We left the movie theater. It was a clear evening. I dropped him off, and I pulled out of his driveway and turned left, and that's when I saw an orange ball. It shot south, and so I turned south, and it was maybe 50 feet, 75 feet. My vehicle started to shake and shudder, and I noticed that the gauges were just jumping to the left, to the right. And I remember feathering the throttle, thinking it was going to stall. And literally the next thing I remember is being in the motion of getting back into my vehicle, and I had no idea where I was. I noticed I had a little bit of blood here in my mustache portion of it. It was dried up and it was flaky. That's how I knew it was there.
How did you feel at that moment?
There was a sense of confusion. There was a bit of panic. I quickly had to assess where I was.
What did you assess, if anything?
This was completely out of my realm of control.
So did you notice any other marks or any pain about your body?
I had noticed I had 2 puncture wounds in my chest.
Did you happen to get any of these puncture marks looked at by anybody after the incident?
After I sent those to my brother, he encouraged me to get a doctor to look at it, and he said he necessarily couldn't explain what they were. Yes, they were there. He did ask if I had recently had any radiation treatment, because they kind of resembled a bit of bubbly tissue. There was 2 more behind my ear, the same distance apart.
And do you still have marks from these today?
The ones on my head, no, but on my chest, yes, you can still see where they were.
Did you have any feelings or any specific thoughts about that, either then or now?
Maybe it's a sensation of being violated, or just something had occurred that I just didn't see myself in the mirror. I didn't see myself in the mirror. Something had changed.
Is there anything that happened to the car? Had the airbags gone off or anything, like he'd been in an accident?
The airbags didn't go off. There was several $1,000s worth of damage to my vehicle that was found afterwards. The 4-wheel drive relay was burned out. That was unexplained.
So all that stuff's electrical, but there was no collision damage visible on the vehicle?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
After I contacted my brother, he had contacted a group that came out that conducted an investigation. They did find trace radiation on my vehicle. If you put a compass on my vehicle, originally when they first came out, if you set it on the hood of the vehicle, the compass would spin. If you walked around the vehicle, the compass would also spin.
The first thing that caught my ear was when he talked about the car is very, very heavily magnetized. There could possibly be some sort of lightning or thunderstorm involved in this, because you can have that kind of thing happen and you can be struck by lightning and it can affect your mind. There's no question.
Matthew's story is compelling, intriguing, fascinating, but there's something he doesn't want to remember. When he's telling his story, I didn't feel comfortable.
The team take time out from interviewing Matt to assess his case. Investigator Daryl Sims claims to have had negative abduction experiences, and Matt's evidence disturbs him.
Matthew appears to have been abducted and physically violated, and I think there's strong evidence to illustrate his point.
No. Violation is too strong a word, as usual.
Stephen claims to have had contact with aliens and believes they are a force for good.
ET contact is a complex thing, and, you know, we've got to dig deeper and get to the facts of this.
Well, the blood and puncture marks that he has do follow a pattern that's been reported in other cases of alleged abduction. But clearly, I think there could be natural explanations as well.
UFO journalist Maureen Ellsbury is looking for a rational explanation, and so is aeronautics engineer Mike Barra.
I got a long way to go before we reach the point where I'm saying that these actually been abducted. I mean, to me, the key to this whole thing is going to rest on the physical evidence, and that involves the vehicle, the high radiation around the vehicle that was recorded originally. So what I want to do is definitely try to rule in or rule out a natural explanation for what happened to him that night.
Well, I'll get my Geiger counter and I'll get out in the field right there where he was abducted, and we'll check it for raised levels of radiation.
What I'd like to do, Maureen, is I want to get Matthew out in that car, drive the route of contact, and I want to get back into that 90 minutes of missing time.
I'll go with you.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Maureen and Stephen head with Matt to the location where he claims he saw the UFO. This is the first time Matt has returned to the scene since his abduction experience in 2009.
What I want to do is take Matt on the exact same journey that he made from the cinema to the point of the abduction. You know, whatever happened is in there. It was recorded. So by getting him to relive the journey, he can relive the experience.
So it was at this point here of the roadway that the vehicle started to hesitate. Gauges started to go crazy. As I was approaching this bend, was about where I started feathering the gas pedal, thinking that the vehicle was going to stall, and right here.
Right, stop. So it was right at this stage, this is the last moment that you have conscious memory before this time lapse. This is exactly
This is the exact same spot.
How does it feel to be back here?
Talking about it, it's eerie.
This is the spot where a craft possibly came down and took you. Wow.
The UFO investigators are in alien abduction hotspot, Avon, Indiana. Local witness Matthew Reed saw a strange light and experienced 90 minutes of missing time.
I had no idea where I was.
And woke up in a field with strange marks on his body.
I had noticed I had 2 puncture wounds in my chest.
But no recollection of what happened.
This was completely out of my realm of control.
Now, investigators Stephen and Maureen have taken Matt to the site where he saw the UFO.
Something happened in between here and the next location. What happened?
It's the first time he's been back there, and he's starting to recall the events of that night.
My memories are being in a craft.
Do you remember going into the craft?
No.
What's your first conscious memory of being in that craft?
Just standing in a room, everything was out of focus. Only moments after, there was a triangular type object that was coming from the ceiling. I could tell it was coming towards my head. And to me, that's where the panic started to set in.
So then what happened next, Matthew?
I don't remember anything else.
When you came back, you had a bloody nose. So that must have happened whilst you were on board the craft, but you have no memory.
Don't have any memory of that.
ET contactee Stephen has a positive view of aliens and wants to know whether Matt's experience was good or bad.
How do you feel? Were they looking after you?
This was very premeditated. It was like they had an objective. It was just they needed something. They were doing something. There was almost a sense of there was a time limitation on it. Just and out the door.
How do you feel about talking it through with us now?
I feel better because you're listening. That's all I ever wanted.
Investigator Stephen is developing a theory that Matt has more to recall about his alleged contact with extraterrestrials.
I knew it. Bringing Matt back here has really jogged his memory. It's hard for him to relive, I can understand that. But I do suspect he's got much more to tell.
Meanwhile, 2 miles away, Mike and Daryl are at the site where Matthew woke up after his alleged abduction.
Well, this is it. I guess it was this area right here, according to the map. Daryl and I are out here in the field where Matthew says that he found himself after his alleged abduction experience. In fact, we're looking in the area right where his car was found. And there was some radiation tests done by a former police officer who claimed that there was heightened radioactivity in this area. And we're here a few years later with Daryl's sensitive devices trying to pick up whether there's any traces of that radioactivity today.
Ex-CIA operative Daryl Sims' Geiger counter is picking up traces of radiation that are higher than the normal background levels.
Mike, I've got 2 spots over here that might have something.
Okay,
Come on over.
Well, okay, but just because it's radiation doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial, so show me. Let's check it out.
Come on over. We'll check these 2 areas out. I'll show you what I'm saying. It's more than normal background radiation. You can see it'll go off a great deal.
Okay, Daryl, I see that, but, you know, raised background radiation levels, magnetic fields going a little bit crazy, that stuff could all have natural explanations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Natural Explanation.
I think I can prove that this has a perfectly natural
If you've
explanation.
got a case, make it.
All right, we will.
Despite Matt's claims of abduction and increased radiation found on his car, aeronautics engineer Mike still believes there is a rational explanation behind Matt's missing time experience.
So I'm working on a theory that Matthew was not abducted by aliens. In fact, Matthew's car was struck by lightning, and that can account for pretty much everything he experienced that night.
As Mike seeks to prove there's a natural cause behind Matt's missing time, alien contactee Stephen is in a one-to-one with him.
It helps to share your story. Now, I just hope that Matt can tell me more about his own experience because it will help him. So, Matt, we've just come from the location where you were taken. How did that make you feel?
To be back there, it was one road that I have avoided. The truth of it is it's 2009 wasn't the first time that I was abducted. My brother and I were abducted in 1967, and the entire family was in 1969.
Oh my God.